Have you ever had an itch that just wouldn't go away? No rash, no reason, just a quiet discomfort that stayed with you? For most seniors, it's easy to brush it off. Dry skin, detergent, age. But sometimes the body doesn't shout, it whispers. And one of those whispers could be the first sign of cancer. This video is not meant to scare you. It's here to help you listen, not to the noise of panic, but to the subtle signals your body may be sending. We'll gently walk through 7 common itchy spots, often overlooked, yet shown to be connected with serious conditions like lymphoma, pancreatic cancer, leukemia, and more, especially in older adults. You're not alone in wondering, is this just aging on us or something more? That question matters, because awareness is strength and even small discomforts can carry deeper truths if we choose to notice. So stay with me. This isn't about fear, it's about clarity, care, and quiet confidence in your health. If this resonates with you, give the video a like, subscribe for more elder wisdom, and tell us in the comments, have you ever experienced a strange itch that didn't make sense? Your story might help someone else. Number 1. Itching on the lower legs. Sometimes the body doesn't shout, it murmurs. It sends out quiet signals, hoping we'll slow down long enough to notice. One of those signals, especially in older adults, is a persistent itch on the lower legs. It may sound harmless, even too ordinary to worry about. But when that itch lingers for weeks, especially without any rash, without any new soap, lotion, or visible irritation, it deserves a second look. In seniors, the skin naturally becomes thinner and drier, and it's easy to blame discomfort on age alone. But this particular kind of itch, located around the shins and calves, can be something much more serious. Doctors have linked it time and again to lymphoma, a type of blood cancer that can quietly grow inside the body for months, even years, before more visible symptoms appear. And for many people, this deep burning itch is the very first sign. I remember a story from a quiet man named Walter, who lived just outside a small town in Indiana. He was 75 and had recently retired from the local post office. Every evening, like clockwork, he'd scratch at his lower legs while watching the news. At first, he thought it was the detergent his wife had switched to. Then, he blamed the new wool socks his granddaughter had given him for Christmas. But he changed soaps. Changed socks changed nothing. The itch stayed. It was only when he began waking up at night to scratch and noticed that lotions offered no comfort that he finally brought it up during a routine visit. His doctor ran basic blood work, which revealed an unusually high white blood cell count. Further scans showed swollen lymph nodes near his chest. The diagnosis, early-stage Hodgkin lymphoma. Walter was lucky. Because he spoke up, treatment began early. And now, years later, he's healthy, gardening again, and still writes letters to his grandkids every month. He often says, "It wasn't pain that warned me, it was an itch." There's another memory that stays with me. An older woman named Mrs. Clara, age 80, who had spent most of her life teaching music at a community center. She had the gentlest hands, but she said they felt on fire every night from the knees down. No rash, no allergy. She'd tried oatmeal baths, over-the-counter creams, even switching to hypoallergenic sheets. Nothing helped. When asked where it itched, she pointed to her lower legs and said, "It feels like something under the skin is dancing all the time." That description, though poetic, is actually quite common in cancer-related itching because the irritation isn't coming from the surface but from within. In Clara's case, the cause was a slow-growing lymphoma affecting her immune system. She had no fever, no weight loss, just that strange, unyielding itch. What makes this warning sign especially tricky is that it doesn't come with drama. It doesn't demand your attention with bruises, bumps, or swelling. It simply waits, quietly. And that's what makes it dangerous. When older adults feel an itch in the lower legs that doesn't respond to care, that worsens at night, and that keeps returning without a clear reason. It's time to ask deeper questions. Not every itch is serious, but some itches, the persistent ones, the ones that seem disconnected from any surface cause, those deserve a closer look. Because sometimes the first step to healing is listening to something as small and as easily overlooked as an itch that won't go away. Number 2. Itching between the shoulder blades, upper back. Some discomforts in life feel too small to mention. A little itch between the shoulder blades just out of reach often seems harmless. We blame posture, maybe an old chair, maybe the tag on a worn shirt. But when that itch keeps returning, when it doesn't respond to lotion, and when it feels like it's coming from inside rather than the skin itself, it may be time to pause and ask, what's really going on beneath the surface? Especially for older adults, this kind of persistent, localized itch in the upper back has been quietly linked to one of the most silent and deadly illnesses of all, pancreatic cancer. While the connection may seem strange at first, it begins to make sense when you understand how the body works. Pancreatic tumors can press on or block bile ducts, causing bile salts to build up in the bloodstream. These salts irritate nerve endings, and some of the most densely packed nerve fibers are in the upper back. So, what starts as a simple itch might actually be your body's way of saying something deeper is wrong. I remember a gentleman named Howard, 72, who came into his clinic every 3 months just to check his cholesterol. He was a quiet man, worked in carpentry most of his life, still drove his truck, and played cards at the senior center twice a week. But on one visit, he mentioned an itch on his upper back. He called it a mosquito that never lands. His wife had tried every cream from the drugstore. Nothing worked. It itched all night, he said, even when he wasn't sweating. There was no rash, no dry skin. It just sat there, taunting him. The doctor almost dismissed it, but something in the way Howard described the sensation made her run a liver function test. It came back on. Further imaging revealed a small tumor in his pancreas, already pressing against a bile duct. Howard caught it early, because he trusted his instincts when something didn't feel right. That itch wasn't random. It was his body's first cry for help. Then there's the story of Marlene, a retired school principal who loved gardening. She told me she couldn't sleep on her back anymore. She'd wake up every night reaching for the same spot between her shoulders. At first, she thought it was a pulled muscle or maybe her old mattress, but even when she slept upright in her recliner, the itch returned. No redness, no bumps, just a deep internal irritation. When she finally got it checked, doctors discovered elevated bilirubin levels, which led to a diagnosis of a pancreatic mass. It hadn't yet caused pain, but it had whispered through the nerves in her back. What makes this so important for seniors is that many of us are used to small aches, small itches, little nuisances we've learned to ignore. But the body has a memory, and when something unusual repeats itself, same place, same time, same stubbornness, it often carries meaning. That persistent itch between the shoulder blades might not just be a back issue, it might be a signal from the gut, from the bile ducts, or even from the pancreas itself. And while it's true that many cases of back itch are benign, it's the pattern that matters. When it stays, when it deepens, when nothing external seems to solve it, it may be time to listen more closely. Because in old age, staying healthy is not just about reacting to pain, but about recognizing the early quiet warnings our body sends us long before anything else appears. Still watching? Comment, upper back itch, if this one surprised you. Number. The itchy scalp without dandruff. Most people wouldn't think twice about an itchy scalp. It's common, especially as we get older. Dry weather, aging skin, or even a shampoo that doesn't quite agree with us. It all makes sense. But there's a kind of itch that doesn't behave like the rest. It doesn't come with flakes or redness. It doesn't respond to moisturizers or dandruff treatments, and it feels deeper, more like a tingling or crawling beneath the surface than anything on top. For many older adults, this type of itch, particularly when persistent and unexplained, has been linked to more than just dryness. In some cases, it can be an early indicator of something serious, leukemia or even skin cancer developing on the scalp. The scalp is often overlooked because it's hidden beneath hair, difficult to examine, and easy to dismiss. But in reality, it's one of the most sensitive areas of the body, rich with nerve endings, and a prime location for early symptoms to silently emerge. I once spoke with a man named Ellis, a retired teacher who had just turned 74. He had always kept his hair short and neat, priding himself on a clean, simple routine. One fall, he started to notice a strange sensation on the crown of his head. He called it a spark that wouldn't stop. It wasn't painful, but it was distracting. Every afternoon, like clockwork, the itching would begin. Same spot, same intensity. He tried switching shampoos, then eliminated all his hair products. When that didn't help, he thought it was stress. But after 3 months of no change, he finally mentioned it during a checkup. His doctor, noticing no visible rash, ran blood work just to be cautious. What came back was unexpected: elevated white blood cell counts. Further tests confirmed early-stage chronic lymphocytic leukemia. The itching had been Ellis's first and only symptom. There had been no bruising, no fatigue, no fever, just that silent itch at the top of his head. Then there was Judith, 68, a former librarian with a love for hats and walking her dog every morning. She said the area just behind her right ear began itching about a year into retirement. It wasn't constant, but it always returned. There was no dryness, no sign of irritation. It felt internal, like a wire was being pulled gently but persistently. She chalked it up to sun exposure, or maybe fabric rubbing from her hat. But when she finally mentioned it during a routine dermatology exam, the specialist took a closer look under proper lighting. What looked like a tiny dry patch was actually the early formation of a basal cell carcinoma. Small, silent, and very real. Judith's honesty, and her decision not to ignore a minor annoyance, allowed her to get it removed quickly before it grew deeper or spread. These stories remind us of something many forget. The scalp speaks too, and it often does so in a way that's easy to overlook, through a strange itch that no product can soothe. Especially in older adults, where skin sensitivity becomes more common and nerve changes go unnoticed, it's important not to dismiss recurring symptoms just because they seem small. If your scalp is itching in the same place every day and nothing seems to relieve it, take it seriously. The body knows before we do. And sometimes the earliest warnings are the quietest ones, the ones that come from a place we can't even see without a mirror, but that never stop trying to get our attention. Number 4, itching on the chest or around the nipple. Some signals from the body don't look the way we expect. We're often taught to search for pain, lumps or swelling when something is wrong. But sometimes, especially in older adults, the first sign is something far more subtle, like an itch. And when that itch keeps returning to the same spot on the chest, around the nipple, or just beneath the breast, it's not always a matter of tight clothing or aging skin. In some cases, this type of localized, stubborn itch has been quietly linked to inflammatory breast cancer or lymphoma near the chest wall. What makes this especially important to understand is that this kind of cancer doesn't always show up as a visible lump. In fact, it may appear first as a patch of skin that feels a little warmer, thicker, or simply more irritated than usual. But very often there's nothing to see. Just a strange, persistent itch that feels wrong, even though you can't explain why. There was a woman named Lorraine, 70, who began to feel a recurring itch on the outer side of her left breast. She assumed it was the underwire in her bra or maybe the summer heat. She tried changing laundry detergents, wearing looser shirts and even going braless for a while. But the itch stayed, every morning, every night, in exactly the same place. There was no rash, no dryness, no sign of irritation. After months of this, she finally mentioned it to her doctor, who noticed a slight change in the texture of her skin and recommended imaging. A small tumor was found sitting just under the skin, aggressive but still in an early stage. Lorraine hadn't felt pain, she hadn't noticed swelling. She only felt something wasn't right, and that quiet discomfort saved her life. Then there was Richard, 74, a retired mechanic who never once thought that breast cancer could happen to men, but he had a persistent itch just beneath his right nipple. He thought it was nothing, maybe from leaning on his chest while working in the garage. Over time, the spot began to feel more sensitive, not painful, just irritated. When he went in for his annual checkup, his doctor asked a simple question: "Has anything changed?" Richard shrugged, mentioning the odd itch. That small conversation led to an ultrasound, then a biopsy. The diagnosis: male breast cancer. Rare but real. And had he waited, it would have been much worse. What's important to know is that this kind of itch isn't always about cancer in the breast tissue itself. Sometimes it's about the lymph nodes beneath the arms or along the collarbone, the silent places where early lymphoma can grow without notice. The skin might feel heavier in that area or just more sensitive than usual. And while there are many harmless reasons for an itch near the chest, like sweat, clothing friction, or dry skin, it's the pattern that matters. If the itch doesn't move around, if it always returns to the same spot, and if it doesn't get better with lotions or creams, then it's worth a closer look. Especially for seniors, where the skin becomes more vulnerable and our tolerance for discomfort is higher, it's easy to ignore something that doesn't scream for attention. But the body knows. And when it keeps tugging at the same place, quietly, day after day, it's asking us to listen. Because early detection doesn't always start with pain. Sometimes it begins with the most ordinary sensation of all, a persistent itch that refuses to be forgotten. Number 5. Persistent itching in the anal or genital area. There are certain symptoms we hesitate to talk about, not because they hurt more than others, but because they feel more personal. Persistent itching in the anal or genital area is one of them. For many older adults, it's easy to chalk it up to dryness, incontinence pads, poor circulation, or hygiene issues, and sometimes it is just that. But when the itch becomes chronic, lasting weeks or even months, and it doesn't go away with creams, better hygiene, or changes in routine, it might be trying to tell you something deeper. This type of stubborn, localized irritation has been connected to anal, vulvar, or penile cancer, especially in seniors over 60. Because these areas are delicate and full of nerve endings, they often react early, before any lump or visible sign appears. But too often people stay silent out of discomfort or embarrassment, and that delay can cost precious time. There was a man named Lester, 76, who had been using creams for what he thought was a lingering case of hemorrhoids. The itch would come and go but never truly disappear. It worsened when he sat for long periods and sometimes felt like a mild burn. He changed his diet, drank more water, used pads, but nothing worked for long. After nearly a year of putting it off, his doctor finally performed a scope. A small lesion was discovered on the inner wall of the anal canal. It was cancerous, but still at a stage where treatment had a high chance of success. Lester's journey wasn't just about healing. It was a reminder that some of the most treatable cancers start with nothing more than an itch most people would rather ignore. A similar pattern unfolded for Eleanor, a 71-year-old widow who noticed an odd, stinging itch near her outer genital area. She tried everything: soothing gels, fragrance-free soaps, loose clothing, but the itch persisted, especially at night. The skin looked slightly discolored, maybe a little thinner than usual, but there was no lump, no pain. She assumed it was post-menopausal dryness. It wasn't until a pelvic exam months later that her physician noted a rough patch of skin and sent a biopsy for testing. The results confirmed early-stage vulvar cancer. Eleanor had no idea such a thing existed. No one had warned her that persistent itching, even without any obvious sign, could be serious. And that's the reality for many older women who suffer. In silence, thinking discomfort is just part of aging. What makes this especially hard is that we don't like to talk about these parts of the body. We're raised to be modest. We don't want to make a fuss, but silence can be dangerous. These types of cancers are rare, but they're real, and their earliest symptoms aren't always visible. They're felt, a deep, recurring itch, a burning sensation that won't go away, a feeling that something isn't quite right even if you can't see it. The truth is, your body is wise. It notices changes long before we're willing to speak up about them. So if something feels different, especially if that sensation stays in the same place, gets worse at night, or comes with no clear cause, it's worth a conversation. You're not overreacting. You're paying attention. And sometimes that attention makes all the difference in catching something early, when it's still small, still quiet, still curable. If the scalp part sounds familiar, type scalp signal in the comments. Number, itchy palms or soles, hands and feet. Sometimes the body speaks through quiet discomfort in the places we least expect. A strange tingling in the center of your palm, a burning sensation on the soles of your feet. Not painful, but persistent. And when nothing on the skin looks wrong, no rash, no redness, no injury, it's easy to overlook. But for many older adults, these sensations aren't just about dry skin or nerve fatigue. They can be early signs of something deeper, especially when they appear without explanation and don't respond to lotions or rest. Persistent itching or burning in the palms or soles, particularly when paired with fatigue or changes in digestion, has been linked to liver conditions, including bile duct obstruction and liver cancer. As these diseases progress, bile salts can build up in the bloodstream, irritating nerve endings in the most sensitive areas of the body. And because the hands and feet have such dense networks of sensory nerves, they're often the first to respond when something inside begins to go wrong. One story that illustrates this began with a retired school bus driver named Denise, 72, who noticed her palms itched every evening after dinner. At first, she thought it might be something she touched while cooking. She washed her hands more, switched to hypoallergenic soap. The itching continued. Then it began in her feet too, just under the toes and heels, especially when she lay down at night. It wasn't painful, just uncomfortable, like a warmth she couldn't explain. There was no swelling, no bruising, just that creeping discomfort. After months of trying creams and dietary changes, her doctor ordered liver function tests. Her bilirubin levels were elevated, and further scans revealed a small mass obstructing her bile duct. It hadn't caused pain. It hadn't even changed her digestion. The only sign had been that strange, quiet itch. In another case, an 80-year-old man named Harold began to feel his fingers tingling as if they were waking from sleep. He worked with wood his whole life and figured it was nerve fatigue. But it wasn't numbness. It was an itch, deep and constant, especially in the evenings. He rubbed his palms against his pants absent-mindedly every day. After dismissing it for months, he developed mild jaundice, which led to a referral. Tests later confirmed early-stage liver cancer, still small enough to treat effectively. The itching was the earliest clue, weeks before the skin turned yellow or the fatigue became noticeable. These are the stories we don't hear often because symptoms like this don't draw attention. They don't feel urgent, but they matter, and they show us something important. Not every warning the body gives comes with loud alarms. Sometimes it's a whisper in your hands, a tingle in your feet, a discomfort you can't explain, but one that won't go away. For older adults especially, understanding these small shifts is crucial. When your body changes and that change keeps repeating, you deserve to ask why. You deserve answers. So if your palms or soles itch with no clear cause, and if that itch comes with fatigue, changes in digestion, or darker urine, it may be time to look deeper. Not because you need to be afraid, but because listening early gives you choices. And sometimes that simple attention is what turns a quiet warning into a life-saving discovery. Number 7. Generalized persistent body itch without rash. Not all warnings from the body are loud. Some arrive without pain, without swelling, without even a visible trace, just a feeling, subtle, quiet, but persistent. For many older adults, an itch that spreads across the body without a rash is one of those signals. It's easy to brush off. Dry air, aging skin, stress. These explanations are often the first to come to mind. But when the itch doesn't move, around randomly, when it lingers for weeks or months, especially at night, and when no cream or change in environment makes it better, it may be time to pay closer attention. This kind of generalized itch, especially in seniors, has been strongly associated with blood-related cancers like lymphoma and leukemia, as well as liver and bile duct conditions. In these cases, the itch isn't about the skin at all, it's about the blood and immune systems releasing substances that irritate nerve endings under the skin. And it often shows up long before more obvious symptoms like fatigue, bruising, or weight loss appear. Consider the case of a 78-year-old woman named Marion, who began experiencing an odd restless itch on her arms, back, and thighs. It wasn't sharp, but it was relentless. At first, she believed it was the new laundry detergent, then maybe the heater is drying out the air. She switched soaps, added humidifiers, and applied lotions several times a day. Nothing helped. The Itching would wake her up at night, leaving her tired and frustrated during the day. There was no rash, no redness, just the sensation, like something was wrong beneath the surface. Her doctor initially assumed it was just a skin reaction, but when routine treatments failed, he ordered blood work. Her white blood cell count was elevated. Further testing revealed early-stage non-Hodgkin lymphoma. It was caught before it had progressed far, and treatment began immediately. Without that persistent itch, Marion may not have found out until it was too late. Another story comes from a retired bookkeeper named Alan, age 81, who had always been healthy and active. He noticed that for months his back and arms had itched deeply, especially at night. He had no fever, no weight loss, just a discomfort that grew more and more frustrating. He thought maybe he wasn't drinking enough water. He tried changing sheets, adjusting his diet, and even stopped wearing wool. But nothing worked. When he finally told his doctor, more out of annoyance than concern, he was sent for a full physical. Liver enzymes were off. Imaging found signs of early liver dysfunction. The itch had been his only clue. What unites these stories isn't panic, it's persistence. It's the sense that something in the body is trying to get your attention, in a quiet, consistent way. For seniors whose bodies process and signal differently with age, symptoms may appear in less dramatic forms. The key is to notice when something doesn't follow the usual pattern, an itch that won't go away, that doesn't respond to treatment, that's present even when the skin looks perfectly fine. This is not something to ignore. Especially when it interferes with sleep or everyday comfort, it deserves to be mentioned, not because it always means something terrible, but because sometimes it means something treatable. And catching that early can make all the difference. When your body speaks softly, listen closely. Even a whisper can save a life. If persistent body itch is something you've experienced, drop silent symptom below. As we grow older, the body's messages become quieter. Instead of pain, it often sends whispers through strange sensations like persistent itching in specific places. These aren't just surface-level irritations, they can be silent signs of deeper issues including lymphoma, leukemia, pancreatic, cancer, liver problems, and more. The key is learning to recognize patterns and not dismissing what keeps returning without reason. Early detection starts with awareness, not fear. If something feels off, especially when it lingers, talk to your doctor. Trust your instincts. It might be nothing, but if it's something, catching it early could save your life. Now we'd love to hear from you. Have you or a loved one experienced persistent itching that didn't feel normal? Share your story in the comments below. It may help someone else find answers. And if this video helped you, please like it, subscribe to our channel, and share it with someone who may need it. Together we can spread awareness and protect our health, one quiet symptom at a time.